You're listening to the best goddamn podcast available with your host, Rob Childs.
All right. Yeah, man. No, thanks for coming on. Like I said, I don't really do, any fancy intros or anything like that. It's just conversation between you and I and kind of, see where it goes. And so for my listeners that are out there, today's conversation, we're going to be talking to Kevin Ross. He should not need any introduction, and your resume is so long that there's no way I'm going to be able to kind of say all that. So I'll just kind of, hand the mic over to you, let you kind of give it a little intro and, start going through your story on kind of where you started, how you got from, being the raging alcoholic into the dude that you are now, and the story and lessons you've learned throughout the way.
Yeah, for sure. It's a long story, but I'll sum it up as best I can. As you said, my name is Kevin Ross. I started training in January of 2003. I was living in Vegas at the time. Up until that point, I was pretty much just wasting my life away, drinking, full-blown alcoholic since I was like 14, 15 years old. Really fell into that Vegas lifestyle, just drinking drugs, partying, going out every night, and just wasting my life away, And ever since I was a little kid, I was always fascinated by fighting. I love boxing. I love martial arts too, though, So I had thought about maybe boxing one day, but because I love martial arts so much, that was always really kind of calling to me more so than just boxing. But I never really could find any real martial arts fighting. A lot of point sparring and, the old school American kickboxing kind of thing. Then it really kind of gave me that same feeling I would get when I watched like a boxing fight. There was just something different there and to that extreme level. I never really saw it in the martial arts aspect until one day in 94. It was actually right when we moved to Vegas. Actually, I think it was 95. The summer of 95, I was watching ESPN at like 2 a.m. and they had a Muay Thai fight on there. And I'd never even heard of Muay Thai before, or not. I don't remember ever hearing about Muay Thai. And when I saw it, when that started, it just really lit a fire in me. Triggered something that was everything that I'd been looking for. I knew that was it. I was like, if I'm going to do this, and if I'm going to fight, this is what I want to do. So I started looking into it a little bit more, trying to find if there was gyms in Vegas. There was a couple, but there was only one in Vegas at the time that had Thai instructors. And, from my perspective at the point, I was like, if you're going to do it, might as well do it from the source.
Yeah.
And plus they were one of the only ones in Vegas that taught like private lessons. And I kind of knew that if I'm going to do this, one, I was already starting super late. I mean, when I learned about it, I was 15. I thought it was starting late and I didn't actually get started till I was 23, but I kind of knew that I would need to do private lessons and one-on-one coaching because my goal was to fight. It wasn't just to do this for fun. It wasn't to do this just to kind of learn a little bit in a class. And, I figured the fastest way to do that would be one-on-one lessons, with the coach and everything. After I found out basically how much it was going to cost trying to do that, I didn't have any money at the time anyway. So I definitely couldn't do that. And then I contemplated maybe just doing the lessons or the classes and once in a while trying to get a private lesson here and there. But also I wasn't ready to give up partying and drinking. And I knew that if I was going to do this, I've always been an all or nothing kind of guy. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all the way, and I'm going to have to give up everything that I'm doing. I'm going to probably lose all my friends. And this is really stupid because, everyone's going to laugh at me. I mean, if you knew me at that time, it would be so far from anything realistic. It's like a joke, it wasn't, I'm not I was very skinny, very shy, I was always athletic, but I don't think you would look at me and be like, oh yeah, that guy's going to grow up one day and be a world champion fighter.
When you were like drinking and everything, were you fighting a lot then? I mean, not like
No, I mean, I got into a lot of bad situations, but I was never a externally violent person. I would always put it on myself. I was always self-destructive when it came to that, that aggression, a lot of depression and stuff growing up. My parents split up really early. We got dragged around the country, moving from place to place, growing up on welfare, growing up, living off of friends. And, it was just a tough time. And a lot of that stuff, created a lot of depression and anxiety and, anger and rage. But I always focused it internally as opposed to externally. Mm-hmm. I was never a violent or aggressive person. So again, that's why you
think we might have lost you. You there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, lost you for a second.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch over to this other channel.
This happens, guys. It's all part of the internet. It's not like anybody has the internet quite figured out.
All right, is that working now?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, picking up where I left off. Yeah, so what I was saying was I was never outwardly aggressive. I was always internally very self-destructive. Hence the constant drinking and things like that.
Did you have that like kind of watch me hurt myself to hurt you type thing, or like does that mentality make sense? I mean, it's almost like you get angry, so you just want to like prove
Yeah, I mean, I understand that kind of outwardly. I never did it for someone else's, I hid a lot of it, what I was doing. I didn't want this attention from people. They're like, oh, I'm hurting myself, so you can look at me like,
okay, yeah.
There's some kind of sympathy or anything. I was relatively quiet about it. I mean, the drinking wasn't quiet, but a lot of the stuff I did. So no, I hated attention. I never wanted the attention on me at all. That was actually something that kind of drove me away from sports when I was a child, because I didn't like the attention. I didn't like the fact that in order for me to win, somebody else had to lose. I also always hated the team aspect of sports, where no matter how hard I work, someone else can slack off, and then, it doesn't really matter. So as much as I enjoyed athletics, I always hated team sports. And, I think that's what really, what I love so much about fighting, because even though you are working within a team aspect, it's still solely reliant on how much work you do or do not put in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as I said, I saw Muay Thai when I was 15. I thought about it, really thought about it, but it just seemed like this crazy dream that would never happen. It kind of seemed ridiculous. And again, once I found out how much it was going to cost and really realized what I would have to do in order to make this happen, I kind of just put it in the back of my mind, like, this is just some crazy dream. This is never going to go down anyway. But every time I would see a fight on TV or wherever, that would just come rushing back, and like, man, I should really be doing this. I really want to do this.
Who were you watching back then? Like, do you remember any of those?
Boxing fights?
Like K1 and going through that? Or?
No, I mean, I didn't probably see K1 till closer to 2000 time. Okay. When I really started watching kickboxing, Muay Thai, that kind of thing. Yeah, it wasn't until probably right before I started. Up until that point, it was mostly boxing. I was watching when the UFC first started, but even that I didn't think that was the same thing I wanted to do. It was like, I like to watch it, and I enjoyed the competitive aspect of it and the fighting and everything, but it just wasn't, I wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that one day. It was just, there's something about whatever it is about Muay Thai that just speaks to my soul,
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. For me, Muay Thai has been really weird. I'm pretty new into my journey. After rehab, I also used to drink a lot. And so like that outwardly thing of like, watch me type thing, that was something that I used to do a lot. It was kind of, I don't know. I was just like a huge manipulative piece of shit, pretty much. I mean,
it's good you can admit that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something I'm proud of, though. It's not something that I look back on and I miss. It's something that I have to look back on, and it's almost like rereading a really bad chapter in my book, just reminding me to not go backwards.
Yeah.
But with Muay Thai, it's helped me kind of focus, like fun. Like I'm so tense, and the same with like jiu-jitsu is I'm just always so tight that I can't just let loose and play, and just have fun. And so like it's that whole journey of trying to navigate not only like the mental aspect of it, but also trying to get your body to do what you want it to do while, having fun and being disciplined at the same time. It's a very, very hard journey for me to be a part of right now, but I'm enjoying it a lot. How did you get started? So like you're drinking a lot, you have like a circle of friends and everything. How do you kind of like stop that old life? I mean, because I know what that life is like. It sucks. And just physically you're beat up, but the mental aspect of, just stopping, did you have to go to rehab or like talk to some friends or?
No, it's an interesting story. So, the only person I ever told about this crazy dream of mine was my one of my best friends, Mo. And we were up late one night. I think this was like 98 maybe. We were like hanging out, drinking on his roof, drinking 40, smoking weed. And he asked me what I wanted to do with my life. And what are you talking about? Like, that seemed like the craziest, stupidest, like nonsensical question ever. Like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what do I want to do? And it just didn't even register my mind. One, for myself, I always had this date in my mind that I'd never lived past the year 2000. I thought I was going to be dead by then. And clearly the way I was living, that wouldn't be very much a surprise. So I just didn't expect to live very long for whatever reason. So I never really thought about it, and I never thought about the future. I never thought about what I would do. And it never really kind of registered to me in like an emotional way. It was just like, that's just like the way it is. It's not good or bad. It's just, you're not going to live very long. Anyway, so he asked me that, and, I hesitated to tell him, but eventually I was like, yeah, I want to fight one day. And I was half expecting him, or all the way expecting him, just to start laughing at me. And he didn't laugh at me. And he really, he was like, well, if anybody can do it, I think that you can. I really think you can do it. And it really surprised me, and it always stuck with me that he said that. At the time I was like, yeah, maybe I will do it. But I went back to drinking and all that. But as I look back, that always stuck with me. And about 2 years later, he actually passed away. He was born with a heart defect and was always in and out of hospitals his whole life. And, it was one of those things that kind of always knew, but didn't want to admit it, maybe hoped that he was one day going to get a transplant, which he never did. But he passed away in 99. And when he died, I promised myself that I would, go after this dream, if not for myself, and then at least for him. I was like, he didn't even get to do anything. He didn't get a chance to fail at a dream, and I'm too scared to even try. So that night after he passed away, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. But after, the drunken coping coma I came out of, never really came out of, actually, it just went back to the same thing I was doing before. And then ironically, right before New Year's, going into 2000, I almost died in what it would have been in this horrific car crash, but I narrowly missed it by mere inches. And that kind of stuck with me, for a moment there. I was like, I felt like that was the moment I was supposed to die, and then I didn't. And then from that point, you know, I started looking at things a little bit differently. I'm like, well, that's when you were supposed to die. Now you're not dead. So what are you going to do? And then also kind of I realized was, if my best friend was still alive, he'd beat the shit out of me because I just wasted 3 more years of my life drinking, pissing my life away just because I'm too scared to go after this dream, you know. And it really, it just like smacked me in the face one day, like all at once. And I was just like, I have to do this. I have to do this. So, you know, I made it my New Year's resolution. Well, it wasn't until 2 years later, but I made a New Year's resolution to finally go after this. You know, I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna finally do this. And prior to that, I had actually, I think in '98, I'd called around to the gyms, and you know, I went down and talked to one of the instructors at Master Toddy's gym. So I kind of knew where I would do it if I was going to. And then that first week of January 2003. I just made up my mind. I was like, I'm doing this. I have to. And I was always so motivated because I knew how much of my life I had wasted by out of fear, out of doubt, out of all these excuses. I knew I was starting very late in the game. So all those kind of doubts and fears, and it's not to say I didn't have them. It was, you have them. So what? You're starting late. So what? You're doing this. So what? You have a choice to make. You can either go after it, you cannot. And it doesn't matter what your excuses are. You just got to do it. So I think because I was so driven, I was able to focus all of that energy into this, as opposed to, oh, I'm like going through like withdrawals of drinking and that. And I was just like possessed, you know. I was like, this is it. It doesn't matter how bad I feel. It doesn't matter how scared I am. It doesn't matter, you know, what my physical dependency is on all these other things. It just didn't matter. You know, I was just that, like Muay Thai for me was my rehab.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I did. I used jiu-jitsu for mine after my medical crash, and I couldn't really walk that well. They started doping me up with all this like gabapentin and shit. And I reached out to a buddy that I went to high school with. I thought he was just an instructor at the gym, and it comes to find out he's actually part owner with Métis Jeopardy. They own Final Round together. And so it was like, I went in, had to talk to him. That was like the first step of like kind of putting in some accountability of, you know, like, when should I show up? What's a good day? This is what I'm going through. And then it took me like 2 weeks to actually grow the balls to go in. And then just that first day, you know, like you step on the mat, and I had no idea what I was doing. You know, I just instantly locked up and tried to like strangle somebody. And it was just horrible. But that kind of leads me into like the journey aspect of things. And that's actually, it's a weird thing, because that's actually what drew me to you more than the fighting of it. Yeah. The fighting aspect was kind of listening to you on other podcasts, and some YouTube videos that you have out, to where you have this level of vulnerability to you, that for me is, you know, that's something that, you know, a year ago was unobtainable, to be able to actually express feelings, let alone be able to kind of like articulate them to myself. And so I'm just kind of wondering how much of martial arts, you know, got into that, because I didn't start caring about, you know, like my mental until I started martial arts. You know, before that, I was just a big meathead in the gym, just you know, pick up, put down. And now it's like I'm learning there's definitely a journey to this, and you do have to be accountable. And it's a very spiritual, or I don't know if spiritual is the right word. Maybe you have a better.
Yeah, I mean, I would say spiritual can be like a multitude of. I mean, you don't have to actually like view it as like this spiritual or religious or whatever thing. You know, it is a centering kind of deal, and like a cleansing of whatever you want to call it, if you don't want to call it your spirit or, you know, whatever. I mean, that's really just whatever kind of label you want to put on it. But yeah, it is. It's very, you have to go inside for things to work out externally. And I think that's also I feel like the world has always been looking externally for things. And that's why the world is the way that it is, because nobody does the work internally. And then it always manifests itself externally in these negative ways, because we're always looking outside for
like validation.
Validation in the things that we do. And, we're always, overcompensating for whatever the things may be. And they show up in these really awful ways. We're constantly looking out. It's like, oh, we need to explore space and we need to explore the other things. But you think about internally and like just this earth and just inside of ourselves, like how little emphasis we put on that is I think a huge problem in the world, and it seems to only be getting worse the more we're trying to like reach outward for these things, where we're just getting so far away from that and everything's just not good.
Yeah. Have you quit drinking? Did you do meetings? Or are you sober? Is there someone I'm just kind of.
No, I'm, it's kind of an off and on thing. I mean, I quit cold turkey day one, and then I stayed sober that entire first year. And then after that first year, I was like, all right, I wanted to learn how to basically have a healthier relationship with not just alcohol, just things in general. Because I've always found that on one aspect, you can just cut these things off, but just by cutting them off, you don't necessarily learn the tools that you need to, have the strength when things go bad or whatever the case may be. And sometimes by shutting it down so much, the relapse from that can be even worse, because you don't have that balance in between, so if you do fall, you fall really, really hard, and it's that much more difficult to pick yourself back up. So for myself, I wanted to kind of develop that strength. It's like, I want to be able to maybe have a drink or two if I want to, and also say no if I want to, not just ignore it and pretend that it's not there. So after that first year, I had a fight. It was like my second fight. I let myself drink that night of the fight, and then the next day, and then by Monday I was back in the gym and cut it off, So then it became that kind of deal where it was like, everything's 100% on fighting. When I have a fight, I'll hang out after the fight a little bit, maybe that weekend, and then by Monday, shut it down again. So, and then I was able to do that for a while. It became, I was like, okay, I can do this. Mm-hmm. It's not affecting anything else. But then, like most things, it's like one day became 2, and then 2 days became 3, and then 3 days became a week, and then a week became a month. And then I was like, all right, this is getting a little out of control. And then I cut it off again. So I stopped drinking completely. So I've done that like 5 or 6 times in the last 20 years. Anytime that I feel like it's getting a little out of control, I'm like, all right, we're going to go cold turkey where I'm not going to drink this whole year.
Yeah.
And I know that in some aspects it would be better if I never touched a drop of alcohol ever again in my entire life. And maybe that would be good, but maybe it wouldn't, that might show up in some other ways negatively. So I feel for myself, it's just been kind of a constant learning and, figuring it out. As I said, I would never, I don't want to encourage other people to drink or do anything like that. I'm just trying to navigate this myself. And I do my best to be kind of open and honest with these struggles that I go through, not just drinking, but fighting in life and everything else. And I think, I think that's what we all need is, if more of us were vocal about these things, we realize that we weren't so alone and so isolated. And, we think we're the only ones going through stuff. And, every person on the planet goes through very similar things, just on different levels.
Oh yeah. That's how this whole podcast started. I was actually sitting in the hospital in Minnesota, and because I had to go to the Mayo Clinic. I went through U of M system, University of Michigan. They had no idea what was going on, sent me to Mayo, and they're supposed to be the best, in the world. And in that hospital, it was amazing. But I'm just sitting there and realize that I have nobody to talk to, I just felt so alone, even though I have, like my fiance, I have, plenty of friends, everything. It's just, I didn't feel like anybody actually was going through with what I was going through. And then I just needed to find out if other people were, so it was like just reaching out to people and just being vulnerable myself was actually, I found the ticket to having those conversations of, actually opening up and talking about being afraid of things and acting basically on fear for most of my life. And, it's like, it took myself opening up in order for other people to be able to have that conversation with me anyway. A lot of people aren't just willing to go around talking about their fears, expectations, and all that shit, on the street. But like, you're very right in that, it just seems like we're so focused on ourselves that nobody else has problems. But if you actually sit down and talk to people and you're real and vulnerable and you're not trying to like put something on them and you just let it flow, like you can find that, there's always similarities in people. And a lot of times I found like some struggles I'm going through when I have those conversations, the other person has something to give me to where I can look at it from another perspective. Yeah. It's the same with fighting. You're in the ring and then you figure a guy out, you get his timing down, but then somebody else comes in and now you have to change your entire game. And it's a really cool journey to be on, because I feel like before I was like almost in this river to where it was just flowing. I was just going day to day. I didn't really know exactly what I was trying to do, where I was trying to go. And now I can see like personal growth and progression. And that's almost become like my new addiction. Of what can I accomplish today? Like I have like a list of things that I want to do professionally, personally and in the gym. And it's having those goals set, like actually wanting to push further. How do you do that? What's your process of actually trying to identify a problem and, like move past it?
Fighting for me has been such a lesson, it really has shown me like the things you are forced to learn through fighting, or really through anything difficult. Fighting is, one of those things, just like athletics are, or anything else. You have to learn so many things, so many lessons that are vital in life are daily, and then in the gym, and that process of becoming a better fighter, martial artist, whatever, you can take that and apply that to basically every problem, anything. I mean, all of these things are based on the same principles. If you want to get stronger, you have to work harder. You have to kind of break yourself down in order to build yourself up. There's a process there. It's a daily thing. It's consistency. It's learning the right ways and the wrong ways to do things. And a lot of times you don't necessarily know how to do them, but just by going forward, you're going to learn and you're going to figure it out, or you're going to figure a lot out. And as you figure more of it out, you're going to realize what pieces work, what pieces don't. There's going to be other people going through the same things. And, it just becomes this process that really, on the simple level of everything, everything's the same. The process to getting stronger, the process to getting better, the process to getting smarter, the process to getting more flexible, whatever the case may be, the process is always the same. The details may be different, and how, that is. But if you simplify it in that aspect, you can apply that to basically everything. What am I doing today to get better? Is what I'm doing today helping me, or is it making me weaker? Is it making me stronger?
Yeah.
Or is it making me worse? And when I started viewing things through that lens, it made everything much clearer to me about how to go about things, how to not, make excuses because we all have excuses. Everyone's got excuses, those excuses don't make us special. It's like what we do with them does. And the longer that I've done this, the more that I've learned about life, other people's stories and journeys, the more I've recognized that fact is everyone has to go through this process, no matter who they are, no matter what gifts or benefits they were given. You still have to work hard. You still have to go through this struggle. It might not be the same as somebody else, but they're probably going through more than you realize. We tend to look at these one aspects like, oh, this person was so lucky because they came up this way. Like, yeah, maybe they did, but you didn't see what that came with as well.
Yeah.
It's like when you look at a fighter or someone in the spotlight, like, oh, I wish I was there I wish I could do that. But you don't see what that comes with. You don't see the pressure that comes with. You don't see the work that comes with. You don't see what it took to get there. You don't see how many failures they went through and continue to go through.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's what's always encouraged me to be very vocal about the ups and the downs and the wins and the losses and being transparent about this journey, because I recognized very early coming up, I was like, I didn't really have anyone to look to in this sport for encouragement other than, the greats, but like someone that did what I did, like an American that started late, that, went through the things that I went through. So I knew that if I could be that for one person, then that encouraged me to be more transparent and vocal in my journey, because I understood the importance of it, and that's why I've always tried to do that when I can. And, I think that's what's helped me kind of stay very grounded in this. I've never really felt, I still don't to this day feel like this person in the sport. I don't feel any different than anybody else. I look at someone that's just starting and I feel that way because I still view myself as I'm just trying to get better. I might be farther along in the timeline and the journey, but we're all at the beginning in the grand scheme of things. If there is no end, because our growth and our strength and everything else is infinite, because it can always be developed, it can always go further. We're all at the beginning. I've kind of always maintained that outlook and mentality throughout my journey.
Yeah, there was something. First, I want to get this question up, but you don't need to answer it. I want to know how important your mindset is to the actual fight itself. But
all of it.
But
all of it,
to kind of juxtapose that, one thing that they kind of almost preached in the facility, the rehab facility I went to, is you're good enough, and they kept like almost trying to like hammer, this theory into my head that I was good enough. And it never made sense to me. I just kept continuously fighting them. And I still hold that to this day of, I don't think I'm good enough, because I know I can be better. Like I'm good enough for who I am today. But I know that I can be better, it's a very weird kind of position to be in when you actually realize that there's something going on that you don't like that you do, whether it's acting like a Karen in a grocery store, and then feeling like a dick later on, and then realizing you can change that. And then once you change one thing, and it kind of sets a domino effect, it just places everything in there. It's where my buddy got me this book. It's like I just read it every day, like a daily meditation thing. And it's kind of been something that I've used as an anchor point to kind of guide me throughout my day, which is a perfect segue into the mindset of when you're actually fighting. Because you have your fight week. Are you anxious leading up to it, or you're pushing? How many fights do you have right now? You're up
like
there.
75, I think.
Yeah. And for people that are listening that aren't too familiar, because there's a lot of guys that'll just watch MMA and they're seeing like 8-2 records.
Fighting in the UFC 8-2.
Yeah, there's like, you'll get guys over in Thailand that have well over 200 fights.
Yeah, so, when they're 12.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have like a system of going in to keep your mind focused on something, or do you like how? Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. The actual fight in that week.
I wouldn't say a system. Everything from day one to the end is all a part of this continuous journey. It's not something you can pick up and put down, and that's something I recognized very early on is the people that did that. You know, it's like you train, you have a fight, and then you disappear for a month and then you come back. You know, it's not something that you can put down and come back to. You know, I feel like there's this train moving, and every time you hop off, you're farther back behind it. You have to stay on this train. Now there's levels of pushing it harder and slowing it down. But if you step off, you know, you're losing so much. So I always, you know, it's like there's always something you can be doing. There's always work that can be done, even if you're laying in bed and taking a day off. You know, you can still be working on your mental aspect of it. But as you are training for a fight, you know, leading up to it, the months, the weeks, the days, it's like you're continually turning into this different person, this different version of yourself, this, you know, not killer, but you almost become robotic in a lot of ways where it's not, or at least I do anyway. It's you become so in tune with what you're doing that you lose connection with any external things. You know, it's just this fight. It's just this moment. So for myself, I don't know, I guess I've always been kind of weird when it comes to that, because fighting for me really like centers me, calms me down. Actually, like I'm so far on the other end of the spectrum than most people, because most people, you know, they get super nervous, they get very anxious, they kind of want it to be over as soon as possible. You know, look at guys like Joe Schilling, he's like, I want this fight to be over now, so I'm going to knock you out as soon as possible. Where myself, you know, I feel like in a lot of ways this kind of hindered me to a degree. Like I enjoy it. Like I love it so much that I don't want it to be over. Like I want to keep going. I want to fight, you know, 20 round fights. I don't want to be done in 2 seconds. So sometimes a lot of times really, I find myself like I enjoy it too much. So I'm like enjoying like almost the game of fighting, as opposed to, you know, this is like a life and death situation, and you should probably get it over with as fast as possible. So there's a lot, especially I would say the last couple of years, but I was also fighting kind of clearly a different caliber of person, and I'd been in the sport for so long. So then it really did become like I was just having fun, you know. But it was I've had a lot of stages of my career, but no, I've never struggled with like staying focused and centered and, you know, ready to do this, because again, I've always viewed myself as playing catch up. You know, I recognized how far behind I was from where I could have started from, or from where most people had started from. So every moment of every day, I was like, I know that I'm behind. I need to do everything 10 times more than anybody else. I need to be 10 times more focused, more disciplined. If anything isn't helping me get better, I viewed it as getting worse. And I think a lot of things that we do, we view in this kind of, it's not that bad mindset, kind of like with diet and training and everything else. We're like, oh, well, I can have this beer, I can have this cookie, I can have this day off. You know, it's not that bad. It's not that big a deal. But we continually do that over time, and eventually you end up in this really broken down, weakened state. And it's the same thing with getting stronger. The more you can push yourself to that side of the spectrum, where is this making me better, or is this making me worse? I feel like if you can view things where there is no in between, it simplifies your decision making and the things that you want to do. Is it's not that bad. It's either better or it's worse. It's one of the two. And, you know, in a lot of ways too, though, that extreme mindset can be detrimental, and it can I think you have to, if you really want to do something to that high extent, you know, that top 10 percentage, you have to have a certain level of obsession and focus, hopefully not in a detrimental way, but you do have to prioritize, you know, what's more important to you right now. Is going out and hanging out with your friends more important than what it's going to take to become the best that you can be in whatever field it may be? And it's very easy to rationalize, you know, that it's not that big a deal, that it's not that bad. And yeah, you're right. It isn't that big a deal, but is it helping you get to that ultimate goal? And if it's not, from my perspective, is that you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah. That obsession it's lonely. So for myself, when I decided to change my life, I decided to change my life. You know, I didn't just want to change one thing. It was, no, my life sucks. I want to change it. And I work with combat athletes, with their nutrition, their weight cuts, you know, doing all that, and going back to school to get my master's to, you know, I'm going towards like the UFC PI is kind of like where my goal is. And I'm going to get there. You know, I have a huge team around me that's amazing, but it's extremely lonely because that's all I can think about, you know, is getting this done and what can I learn? Because I look at it as, how can I make this person a weapon? You know, it's not about me. It's all about the fighter and getting them to the fight and watching them throughout the weight cut process, and then the weigh-ins, the rehydration, and then you at some point switch flips. You know, some people it's later on, some people it's during camp or the first, you know, the last week. So it's always different, you know, kind of how things work. I know I've also gone through a lot of injuries, just like with medical shit that's been going on, but you know, torn like an intercostal.
That's fine. I did that right before I fought Tomahawk, 10 days before the fight.
Oh my God.
Dude, that was the worst shit ever. I was literally in bed for 2 days. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't sit up. I kind of found this angle to sit at and had these really short breaths. And this was 10 days before a world title. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't do this. You know, maybe I should put the fight off for a month or something, you know, and then, you know, I'm sitting there debating. I'm like, I literally can't even breathe. I can't even move. How am I supposed to have this fight with this lunatic Australian kid? You know, this is bad. You know, I've worked my whole career to get to this point and finally got to this point, and this happens. And it was one of those things where, you know, fortunately, or unfortunately, I had so many injuries throughout my career and things like this. You know, I recognize that just because something awful happens doesn't mean it's going to be an awful thing in the fight. You know, and for myself, in a lot of ways, it actually made me fight better because I had to be that much more focused and driven. And, you know, I guess I viewed things as like, at what point does it become you're just being a baby about it? You know, you can say like, yeah, I broke my hand, maybe you shouldn't fight. But then some people are like, oh, I stubbed my toe, maybe I shouldn't fight. Like, there's a spectrum there. And I've always been on the extreme end of, it's like, if I can breathe, I'm going to fight. You know, even if you have to stand me up in the corner, I'm going to fight. And because I had gone through so many other injuries, you know, it was one of those things where I realized you have a choice to make. You know, it's not, regardless of the injury, you don't have it. Everyone's got an excuse not to do something, whether it's real or made up in your mind. We all have excuses not to do stuff. And it's the ones that take those excuses and use them to push past it that end up making it. It's the ones who view these excuses and these reasons why they can't or don't feel like they can make it. They don't do anything. And that's unfortunately the majority of our mindsets, because these things are very real. You know, even if they are just in our mind, it's a very real, you have very real reasons not to do a lot of the stuff that we do. But I started, you know, from the beginning of dealing with injuries and stuff, I started viewing those things as a question. It was like when something bad would happen, it was like, how bad do you really want to do this? Yeah. That's the question I perceived whenever an injury would happen. Like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. You know, what's your worst injury?
Well, blowing my knee out, you know, that was the worst one as far as what it took to come back from that, the rehab, the mental aspect of it. But the most detrimental one, I fractured my skull. I got kicked in the back of the head in a fight, and that was the most devastating, as far as like that could have killed me very easily and should have. But as far as like healing from it, it was just time, as opposed to like rehab and you know, like my knee was just like the most awful shit ever. Like dealing with, you know, coming back from that was horrific. It was horrific.
Yeah, I was actually kind of hoping you were going to bring up getting kicked in the back of the head. Do you mind sharing how you break your skull? Because if it was my understanding of the story, the dude had shin pads on. You know, but like, I know, like, I'll check my Fairtex shin pads and there's like, I shouldn't be able to break a skull. So, so how do you break your skull?
You put metal plates in there. That's what you do. So yeah, they have these shin guards they're the small ones, but they have little strips of bamboo is what's normally in them. So it's like kind of padding and then like that little bit of hard wood, but you can take those out and you can put whatever you want in there. And what they do sometimes is they'll stick pieces of metal in their metal strips. He kicked me in the back of the head, and on the video, it sounds like someone dropped a pumpkin off of a sky rise. Like it sounded like my head exploded. I didn't know it was fractured, actually, and I fought again the next day. And then when I found out a month later that it was fractured, because you know I was having a lot of problems with my vision. I thought I just had a concussion or something, but he was like, I had 1.5 inch fracture in the back of my skull. The doctor was like, you should be dead right now, or at the least you should be a vegetable, because if that had pushed into my brain, my skull had gone in, that would have killed me for sure. But that was you know, one of many, but that was the most life-threatening injuries I've ever had.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like getting injured is kind of similar to like that relapse feeling or that starting late feeling of now you got to catch back up? And like for me, whenever I can't train, I want to go watch and just be a part and, you know, like hang out, but at the same time, I don't want to not be able to do it. And it's just, I'm realizing like, I'm just seeing everything keep going and me stuck, you know?
Yeah, it's tough. It's so tough, especially after you've gone through it so many times, because in your brain, you feel like, I've done this so many times, this should be nothing. You know, it's like my last injury was I broke my thumb. I cracked my thumbs down through the bone there 2 weeks before a fight I was supposed to have in Japan. And you would think this thumb wouldn't have been as detrimental as like my blowing my knee out. Be like, all right, you overcame blowing an ACL out. This thumb is no big deal. But in a lot of ways, it was just as tough mentally. And I think one, because it is such a small thing, you feel like it shouldn't be as bad, so you're not like prepared for the emotional kind of mental aspect of dealing with it. And I'm like, fuck, man, like after all this time, after almost 20 years, like I got to deal with this now, this stupid fucking thing. It's just a thumb, you know. But it's one of those things where you realize it's a constant learning. It's a constant education. Like life is this constant lesson that just because you've gone through something one way doesn't mean you're not going to be taught the same lesson again, just in a different way. And, you know, when you can simplify it and like, here's an opportunity to get better or I can get worse. And that's what I really viewed it as. You know, I had a day of like just feeling sorry for myself. But I'm like, all right, well, what can we do with this? We can either get better from here, or we can be like, oh, poor me, my thumb's broken. Maybe I'm never going to fight again. And maybe it's too late in my career and I'm too old. And, you know, using those excuses to just break us down. And it's like, you did all this work for the last 20 years and you're going to let this little thumb like just destroy you and just ruin everything you just did. I'm like, no, fuck that. Yeah. Like I'm gonna come out of this better. It can be, it's like the miles add up, you know, and the injuries add up and you're like, shit, man. It's like, I don't want to keep going through this. But then you realize like, that's what life is. It's always going to do. Even if you stop fighting today, that's kind of lesson is going to be forever, whether it's an injury, whether it's a failure, whether it's a death, whether it's whatever, you know, life is always going to be forcing you to have those lessons, and it's what you're going to do with them, but whether you're going to come out of this a better person or a worse person. And, you know, that's all on us. You know, you can't use your excuses as like, oh yeah, well, I had this going on, so that's why I gave in to this. We all have that. So yeah, I kind of just try to view those things as a challenge and as a, you know, a recognition that like nobody's special. Nobody deserves not to have bad things happen to them. Like everybody's gonna good people, bad people, whatever you want to call it. Like we all going to go through this, and, you know, you can say this isn't fair or this is that, but it doesn't change the fact that like you have a choice to make now. It doesn't matter why this thing happened. It doesn't matter if it was just, it doesn't matter anything. Like you got a choice to make, and what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, yeah, no, you're exactly right. You just kind of explained life. I mean, that's, you know, that's it right there. That's the beautiful thing about like this show, is that I don't talk just to fighters, you know, like I've actually talked to a couple doctors, clinical psychologists, technologists, you know, other fighters. It's just, everyone has a fight. You know, some people have to put gloves on. Some people have to get out of bed, you know, like it's very hard to insert yourself into someone else's narrative and then, you know, understand what they're going through. Another thing that I've noticed is self-justification. You know, to you, it may sound like an excuse, but I've justified everything to myself that I shouldn't do this, or, you know, like it's okay to eat, you know, half a box of Lucky Charms at midnight, you know, or whatever the hell it is, you know, like you can justify anything. It's
for sure.
It just kind of sucks. But yeah, so what do you have coming up in the future? You got any fights coming up soon or?
No, man, I retired. My last fight was June. That was my retirement fight. I mean, I've had like I feel like I've almost had 3 careers. You know, the first part of my career was all the way up until I fought Sakadow, and then after I fought him is when I blew my knee out. And, you know, that is what I view as like my career. But then after blowing my knee out and coming back from that injury, that was like the years in line fight and all of that. And that was kind of just another stage of my career. And then after I got done with all that, and then I switched over to Bellator, which was the last like 4 or 5 years doing kickboxing. That was, you know, just another piece. I mean, I've been crazy blessed and fortunate to have such a long career in so many different aspects of it. But that last fight I did, no matter what, I was like, before I retire, I have to at least do one more Muay Thai fight. And, you know, I was fortunate that I was able to make that happen, and it was on a, you know, awesome show in Florida. And, you know, over the last 2 years, obviously with everything going on, and just being at this stage in my career, it became so much more of a job to where I was like having to schedule training sessions and body work and doing this, and it stopped. I mean, the fun and the enjoyment of the camaraderie and everything, like that had been gone for such a long time, since I had like a team to work with. Like every day I'm going to go to the gym, there's going to be X, Y, and Z there, and these people, and we're just going to work. And, that's where it's kind of this, it's like I would do that forever. But when it becomes this thing where it's like, I'm basically by myself in the garage training, and I got to call a pad holder, I got to call someone to spar with. And that's kind of how it was the last couple of years. So it took a lot of that fun out of it for me, which might have been a good thing. Cause I probably would fight forever just cause I love to do it. But, I realized, what am I really doing now? Like, am I trying to, are there titles I'm trying to win? Are there people I'm trying to beat? Like, well, I'm just fighting because I love to do it. I really love to do it. It's fun for me, but it'll always be that way. Even if I can't do it, I'd still, if I let myself, I'd still be like crawling in the ring and trying. But I never wanted to be that person that just kind of slowly is just each time you're just worse and worse and worse and worse. And there's a lot of reasons to that. I find that most of the time, of course, everyone still wants to fight, but they're not willing to, or they can't physically put the work in that they need to, yet they're still trying to fight at that same level. And that's why you see as fighter, when fighters are like, hey, maybe this guy should retire, he's still trying to fight at that same level, yet he's not able to or willing to put the work in. And I was like, I will never do that. I'm never going to do that. I was like, I want to be a person that kind of does this right, or as right as you can. I want to be, an example to the younger fighters of how to go out the right way. That was something Gina said to me before I retired. She was like, you've been this kind of example of someone in the sport of how to overcome these things, how to pick yourself up after you get knocked down. He's like, this is just another opportunity you have of how to show people how you would do this, like retire, how Kevin Ross would retire, like do it right, do it the way you want to do it in your own words, and then be done. Don't kind of be stuck in the middle there. If this is it. And that was really the only thing that got me through the training up to that last fight, because it was just, fuck, man. It was like, it was just rough. It was, not only just the way the world was, but the time and my career and the people I had available to train with. And I was on my like third generation of fighters. It became to where I'm like the guy I'm helping everybody else out. Like who's really helping me out and like pushing me to that extent of like keeping you sharp. And, it's one thing when you're coming up with all these other really amazing fighters and killers and people that like you either got a sink or swim kind of thing. That's how I came up. I like lived in the fire with these lunatics who could kill me every day, and it forced me to get better and better and better. But as the years went by and people retired, it was like all of a sudden I'm in this position and like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be this guy. I want to be the guy down here that I'm trying to get up to all these other guys. And it just changed so drastically. And before I even realized it, I was like, wait, what just happened? Why I don't understand what's going on anymore. And that in itself took some of the, I always enjoy helping people out and training people and stuff. But it's like, if I'm fighting, I need help. I need you to help me. And there's only so much that someone can do that's not at that level, I guess.
So what's pushing you now? And then, I know I got to get you out of here, but if you don't have the fighting, because I asked that question kind of just as a segue to, because everybody's got a fight coming up, not like in your case, like, you're putting the gloves down. But I've also heard that. I feel like every fighter kind of says that. So, something could happen. You got Tito Ortiz is still fighting. Like that shit's crazy. But what do you have? What do you have pushing you now? coming up on the horizons? And, for you have a huge online social media following, and everybody's following you. So kind of what do you have coming up and pushing you?
Well, as you said, we all have a fight. Not always, but I view kind of every day as, just because I'm not fighting in the ring, that same mentality, those same lessons are just as, if not more important now, because now I don't have that fight to push me. I don't have that person that's going to try to kill me to make sure I get my ass out of bed, make sure I'm eating right, making sure I'm taking care of myself physically, mentally, emotionally. And it can become very easy to slack off because of that. You don't have that external driving force, but I feel like that should always be there, because life is much more of an opponent than a person is ever going to be. Particularly when you don't have to do it. That's when it's even more important to do, because you don't have to do it. So, I've recognized that as long as I'm taking care of my physical, mental, and emotional health every day, I got to make sure I'm working out. I got to make sure I'm eating relatively good. That allows me to have the tools necessary to live life the way that I should, and that especially now with the way that the world is, I find it even more of a motivator to be the best that I can be in all those aspects. So, after I retired, I let myself relax a little bit, and we were traveling so much, and I just kind of let myself let go of everything. I didn't think about, what am I going to do from here? Am I going to keep training? Am I going to keep working out? What am I going to do? Just kind of a clean break from everything, which was nice. Once we kind of got settled down, I was like, all right, I need to, at the very least, move around a little bit so I'm not a total piece of shit. I'm not going to die, because I'm like, I recognize how easy it is to slip back into that, and it's like, the longer you wait, the harder it is to pick back up. And eventually what happens with most of us is it just seems impossible, because we let it go for so long. We're like, I have so far to go that I'm just not even going to bother picking it up. And if anything, I'm going to go the other direction. So that's always been a motivator to me to not let myself ever get that way. So once I started kind of moving again, started working out again every day, getting my runs in. I mean, just over the last 2 weeks, I've really started what I would call training again. I never really stopped being active. So that's been helpful. And, getting back to, started teaching a lot over the last 6 months. And we have been traveling so much, but which is great for me, because everywhere I go, I can just look up a gym, be like, hey, you got some people that want to train? I've been doing a lot of seminars, doing a lot of private lessons, going up to the fights on Thursday in Denver to check out the world qualifiers. So yeah, I'm staying involved in the sport as much as I can. Still working on my artwork and books, and I've been helping Gina with her projects and stuff. So just like always, I'm always doing a multitude of things. Never have this like one aspect of my life. Even as I was fighting, I'm still trying to juggle, all the other things that I like to do. So I'm always on a multitude of journeys.
Do you have a spot where everybody can go find your artwork?
Yeah. So, they just shut down one of my social medias. They didn't shut it down. They just made it to where I can't post anymore for like 3 months.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
social media jail. Yeah,
it's great. Instagram, DeSoul Assassin is my main one. DeSoul Artist is where I do all my art stuff. But you can go to my website is thesoulassassin.com, and it's got all my artwork. It's got my books. It's got blogs and videos and stuff like that. Same thing with Twitter. I think that's the same handle on there. So I'm pretty easy to find on social media and stuff.
Yeah, and I'm gonna definitely put all those in the show notes below, and then right below the video on YouTube. So go ahead and get you out of here. I just got one more quick question. I like to kind of try to like see if I can't learn something directly from whoever I'm talking to with a problem I'm having. So right now I'm having an issue with trying to actually loosen up in the gym. Everything's great for the first round. And then as soon as somebody corrects me, I'm in my head. And then I start fucking up combos. My footwork goes off and it's all downhill.
Yeah.
How do you stop that and just have fun? Like legitimately, I can't just loosen up and just go have fun.
Yeah.
You got any tips?
Yeah, that's a tough one to do. I always tell, because a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, that they are very rigid in a lot of stuff that they do. One thing that's helpful, and it doesn't feel helpful, is you got to completely just exhaust yourself to where you have nothing left. And then everything has to be loose and fluid, because that's the only way to do it. Because you can't really use strength anymore. So you stop being so tense and rigid, and you just got to kind of flow through it and finding that rhythm and that movement. The tricky thing with a lot of stuff in fighting is there is that aspect of being very tight, very sharp, very strong, but you also need to be loose and fluid at the same time. And they feel like counterintuitive aspects, So I would say it's more important for people to be loose and fluid, because you can always tighten that up and you can always make that a little more firm, a little more sharp. Whereas we try to be so sharp and strong from the beginning that everything's so stiff and it's so rigid, and we're holding our breath and we're flexing all the time. And then we finally just collapse, and then we just fall apart, so to be able to find it in a fluid way, like with a lot of, say you're working on a combo, before trying to do it perfectly right in a technical aspect, just getting kind of the motion of it down, and then slowly start to tighten that up, sharpen it up, making your strikes more crisp. But finding that balance can be a little bit tough. But I would say stop trying to make it so perfect from the beginning, because you're overdoing it. You're too rigid, and then your body just and you collapse. So to be able to find that mid range if you can, or even farther on the looser side than you would normally want to, even if it's just for a minute or two, just to get the kind of feel that the emotion of everything. One thing that can be helpful is just to start practice doing that on your own, whether it's at your house or in the gym, shadow boxing, but doing it in a rhythmic, fluid way, not in a sharp, everything's pop on point, just feeling your body move. That's something my buddy Eddie Abasolo is so great at. He conveys that a lot, just being able to feel that rhythm, feel that kind of play with everything. It's like this rhythmic dance. It's not so serious. And, then you can kind of tighten that up and fine tune it and really make it sharp. But if that's not based in that rhythm, it's counterproductive, because we're trying so hard and it's just garbage and then everything falls apart. So you gotta find that rhythm and that fluidity. That is much more important than really any of that other stuff, because you can always tighten that up, but it usually doesn't go the other way. You can't start tight and loosen up, because you kind of give up so much in the process of that.
Yeah. It's kind of just like in life too. You gotta,
right.
They're always in collaboration with each other. So, All right, man, I know I got to get you out of here. You're a very busy dude. I appreciate you coming on, sincerely.
Yes, my pleasure, man.
Everybody go check out Kevin Ross online. Maybe you can get a chance to do a private with him. Sure. See him at a seminar or anything. Other than that, you got any final words for us?
No. I appreciate you having me on there.
No, I appreciate you coming on. So, all right, Kevin, it's good talking to you. And,
likewise, bro.
All right, thanks, man.